Hi everyone, welcome to my channel where I teach easy, beginner-friendly watercolor techniques. And today we're going to be painting flowers, of course, and let's just get started. So this is the first layer of the flower done. Now let me do a little bit of explaining. Okay, let me take a step back. Let's talk about tools. Just make sure you're using any size watercolor brush that you're comfortable with, size 6, size 8, doesn't matter. I'm holding an 8. Make sure you have your watercolor paints and your watercolor paper. And I know that sounds silly, but you know, some people might not know. I did not know when I started painting, and I was not using watercolor paper. So this is just for, if you do not know, then now you do. And try to get, you know, a decent quality paper, at least 300 GSM, and you will see your painting will improve just because you have nicer paper. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get to the actual painting. So this is the first layer of the painting that you need to get at before we move on. So how did I get to this layer? I broke it down. Okay, let me grab a regular pencil. Okay, so I like to break things down. So with this shape, and they're both, you know, pretty similar, I will divide it in half. So if there's a line going right across, right? So this is the top half of the flower. Okay, and then I have the center, which I've left blank, and then the bottom half, and then some, you know, side petals. Okay, so I'm just going to focus on the top half for now. I'm just outlining it as a whole, but we're not going to paint it as a whole shape, right? And I left the center. Okay, so you see that dark line? That's what I'm focusing on now. Okay, let's repeat that down here. So I like to go with the first petal, and for me, that's usually always the center petal. It is the tallest of the petals, even in this one, right? So it's like a flame-shaped long petal, okay? Once I have that down, everything else is shorter, or it is equal to that, or maybe just a little bit shorter, but it's definitely not bigger than that, right? So the rest of these petals that are on the side are following that rule, okay? And then you know, these petals that are on the side. So if I change my axis to this being 12 o'clock, so my 12 o'clock and my 1 and 11 o'clock petals, right? They are in that angle. And then I have the remaining supporting petals, and they're curved. So that's how I'm going to paint them too, curved. I hope this is making sense so far. And then I've left a gap for the center. Okay, once I do that part, then I paint the bottom of the flower. And at this point, I don't really have an order. I just start adding the petals, okay? But notice that like for example, if all of this is going to be the center, notice that this distance is obviously shorter than this distance, right? So even these supporting petals, so 6 o'clock is maybe half of the 12. There's no real, like, don't sit there and measure things out, but, and then the 7 o'clock and 5 o'clock, same, they're, you know, they're curved, they're They can be shorter than this or equal to it, but definitely not longer than the 6 o'clock. Okay, and then for the gaps that are left, I'm just going to add single strokes. Okay, so let's try painting that. I tried to keep it easy, but let's see what happens. So grab any color, does not matter at all, and you're loading your brush. And I always like to start off with my center one, and it's never a one stroke and I'm done. I always go back in and play with it until I'm satisfied with that flame shape. Okay, and if the edges are jagged, that's fine. I'm more worried about the shape, right? So that's my first petal down, and it's a little darker than I would like, so I'm just going to swipe across it itself instead of redipping into paint or anything. And here come the supporting petals. So notice how they're curved, right? I'm painting them curved. Same with the other side, they're curved. Okay. Now I want to add maybe between 2 and 3 o'clock, and between, like, maybe that's a 10 o'clock. Okay, curved strokes. Now I'm going to move on to the 6 o'clock or any of these. So for this, I'm just going to redip in water, not paint, because I feel like I have enough on my brush. If you feel like you don't have enough on your brush, go ahead and get some more paint. And this one doesn't really have to be flame shaped, but kind of, you know, just makes it a little helpful if it is. Doesn't have to be. And then same, just strokes. Going inwards for these 2 supporting strokes. And that's it. Okay, now, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. I was going to go fiddle around with it more, but I think I'm just going to leave it to keep things simple. Okay, so there it is. I'm going to do it again. Okay, so let me adjust my things so I have space. So I'll just move my paper. Okay, so again, I'm loading up my brush. Not too much, because since this is the first layer, we want to keep it light so that we can add layers. Otherwise, if it's too dark, then we won't be able to add layers. And the way we keep it light is just adding more water to our brush. So let's see what I end up with here. Okay, yeah, see how dark that is? I don't want that, okay? But that's okay, because I'm just gonna redip, or I don't know why I did that. I really will redip right back into this petal instead of my paint palette. So going for that flame shape again. Okay, I'm happy with that. Supporting petals, curved. Okay, at all times, I want to point the petals back to my center. Okay, and then here I can, yeah, let's do the other supporting petals too. And then let's see. Oh, this is still wet. I can still gather paint from here. And then the 6 o'clock, I'm going to leave that center empty. Okay. And then the 5 o'clock supporting, 7 o'clock. And then maybe just one thin, trying to make it curve. I can leave that gap, or I can go ahead and add a little curved. Okay, so that's how I approach this shape. So I'm gonna let this dry. These 2 are still wet. These 2 I painted before I started recording, so they're ready to work on right now. And that's what we're gonna do. Okay, so I'm going to stick with the same color that I had on the base. on the first layer and just make it more concentrated, right? So for that, I'm going to not use so much water. So you don't have to make anything, you just avoid dipping in that much water. But the paint does have to be wet. Okay, let's see. And so what I'm going to do when I go back in here is, excuse me, add fine strokes. So I'm holding my brush almost in a vertical hold. Fine strokes curving up and coming out of the center, just like that. And there's no like specific number or anything, it's just whatever you feel like. And some can be longer, some can be shorter. Okay, and some are pointing down. Oops, I almost just lost my grip on my brush. I am trying to add a little curve to them. Like you see how this one is like straight. I don't want it straight. I want a little bit of a curve. These two are a little too straight, but that's okay. So that's done, and then just going in, continuing with whatever's on my brush. Let's do some more, going from the outside in, so the outer edge of the petal. Okay. Now let's do like almost like a little outline to the petals, but like not a perfect outline. Like feel free to chop up the lines. So like I don't have to trace every single petal. And I don't have to outline like the entire petal type of stuff, right? You see how this line connected? I actually don't like that. That's bugging me. So what I'm going to do is, while it's wet, just dip my brush in water, just clean water. And I'm trying to just lighten that line, that connection, because I don't want it to look like it's connected. So that's a little bit better. I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to bother with it too much, and that's good enough for me. Okay, so that's the second layer. Let's add a second layer to this one, just to repeat the process so you can see what I'm doing. So at this point, I've just re-dipped into my paint. And loaded just the tip of my brush, because that's all I need to use. Okay, and I'm trying to avoid touching the other flowers with my wrist and just smearing everything else I've done on the page. Okay, so I've even pulled my pinky out for support, right, as I'm holding the brush vertically. And just, okay, I'm gonna move my hand back a bit, but you can move it closer to the bristles of your brush so you have more control. I'm moving it back because I don't want my camera focusing on the hand. I need it to, you know, show you the brush. So let's see if it'll. And I forgot to say, you can just size down to a thinner brush at this point, right? I'm sticking to my 8 just because I just thought about that. Sorry. But you can size down and it'll make it easier to do these lines. But very thin and just like quick swipes. Don't apply any pressure. You're barely touching your page with the brush. And then same, let's do some of these coming in. Okay, and then an outline, broken outline. Okay, like I said, not every petal, well, I think I did actually touch every petal, but not everything needs a complete outline. Okay, that's that. So going back to this one, since that should have dried by now, the strokes were very minimal and you know, we didn't use that much paint. Let's paint the center now. I'm just grabbing a nice bright yellow. Yeah, it may not be the cleanest. I might have a little bit of green in there, but that's okay. Yeah, I definitely have some green, but I'm just dab, 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 just filling up the white space, okay? And same with this one, although I'm not sure if the center is completely dry, like all those red strokes, but I will test my luck and see what happens. Okay. I'm okay with that. Okay. Okay, just swirling my brush in the water, cleaning that off. Okay, I'm gonna wait for the yellow to dry and go and add some more detail on that. But for right now, I'm gonna continue with the petals. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my red and we're almost done. We're just gonna add one more layer. Let me get some light going in here. The sun has been playing peekaboo all morning. So you can see. I don't know. Move my page into the light. Okay, so that looks pretty dark actually. I hope you guys can see. So moving on to the third layer, and this is another I don't know what I was gonna say, another what. So I've loaded my brush with the same color, and now I'm gonna add thick marks. Okay, let's call them marks. And let's do it on this flower first, so you can see what I'm about to do. And yeah, so it's just thicker lines that I'm adding. Again, random, and just kind of show that there's light hitting the flower from several directions. Not light, there is contrast on the flower because light is hitting it from several different directions. So we're painting the contrast, right? So we're painting the darkness of it. And maybe not that much, you know. I'm just talking here on this random, just painting on this random flower. But if we go back to this one, I would add just a few of these strokes. So maybe this part. And yeah, you may cover some of those thinner lines that you painted previously, like they may be gone. Okay, not really loving that. So if at any point you feel like you messed up, you can just redip your water and just redip your brush in clean water and come and swipe over your stroke. As long as you do things while, you know, everything's wet, you can kind of fix some mistakes. But like I said, there's no right or wrong with this. So if something feels off, then you can fix it as long as it's still wet. I think I like that thin stroke over there, but I'm happy with that one now. I think I like it better now since I removed that one. The other thicker stroke, let's do this one. And if you're happy with it at just these two layers, then you can stop. But this is good practice in just, you know, obviously layering, but also letting go, doing something different and uncontrolled. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop with this. Learned my mistake, learned my lesson from the other flower. It's better to just stop, and then if I want to, I can add some more. Okay, so my yellows are still kind of wet, but we're gonna pretend they're not. And I'm going to size down just a little bit to a size 4 brush. And I'm gonna add this interesting. If you have like brown, you can add, you should have brown somewhere. There you go. This, I wanna add like little flecks. And sometimes if I want my brown to be darker, I'll just mix it with some black, so it's almost black. There's a lot of black. Okay, let's try this one. And again, I just want to add just like little flecks. So if you have a, you know, get your smallest size brush. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can just add fine little dots. Little dots or flicks going up. I couldn't do it. This size 4 brush is still too big. And that's the smallest size I have on me right now. So I ended up doing just some dots. Okay, so that's almost done. If you want to take it a step further, if you have any white acrylic paint, what do I have on me right now? I see something. Okay, I have this white bleed proof. I wouldn't call it paint. I don't know what to call this. I use this for a lot of things like calligraphy and for painting. So, but it's just not watercolor. So if you have white acrylic on you, you can go ahead and grab it at this point, and you're adding the highlights now, right? So we are adding the whites. I like to actually place it very close to the darks, my dark strokes. And that gives turn off that light and see if that helps. See that? So all those little layers made such a difference from just the flat flower that we had painted. Okay, and then if you want to complete your painting, you're just going to add, I don't think this is green. One second, let me find a green. You can add some leaves if you don't know how to paint leaves. I think I do have a video up on how to paint leaves. So just grabbing a green. And if you want to see me load my brush, so look at how much water I have in my inkwell. And I tell my students all the time, add more water, because this is watercolors. You need water. You need a good amount of water in there to do the work for you. All right, so anyways, loaded my brush. And then now that it's a lot because it's talking, you know, go ahead and paint some leaves. And that kind of completes the look. And it's not just a flower floating. It can be. But okay. So I hope you learned something new today, and I hope you practice this flower, and you know, try it out. I will do a second part to this video and upload that separately, where I just make a quick composition using this same flower and the same technique. if you want to see how to, you know, if you've gotten to this point and you're like, okay, now what? So with that video, you'll be able to put it together and build a final painting sort of with this flower. And what is this flower? Who knows? It's just a flower, right? Go enjoy it. All right. Thanks you for watching. Bye.